Clerk, call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2. Gary Tickets, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Pastor Darius Johnson from Christ Church, Fort Worth. We appreciate very much you coming out today. After the invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you today as we pause to recognize you as the source of our wisdom, even beyond ourselves. We thank you for your favor and your blessings upon our city, upon our county, and upon our nation. We ask you today that you would grant to these leaders wisdom. We pray also for unity, and we pray for your peace, that you may bring us together to accomplish your kingdom upon this earth. For we ask that in the name of your Son, the Lord Jesus, and for your glory. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the second, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Pastor. Thank you very much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's talk a little bit about the agenda this morning. We're going to take several things out of order, and this is what I would propose. Before we go into the public hearings and things such as that, we would like to move over to the briefing agenda, and we're going to talk about the River Oaks tax abatement for the reinvestment zone, and we'll do that first. And then I would suggest that we, after we conclude that we then begin with our other part of the agenda and go into the public hearings as it relates to either the elected and precinct salaries or the fiscal year budget, and then take action as it relates to that particular activity. And then after we do that we ask Dr. Tanasia to come forward and give us his update on continuing health issues in Tarrant County. And then we will go then to the discussion relating to COVID and all of those issues that are surrounded.
Get the hospital district people out of here.
Well, the thing about them is, remember, that's their whole budget. We might get them out. We might do their budget.
So here's the deal. After we do the public hearings, on our agenda, the hospital district piece is before we get into the COVID piece.
I see.
And so we can do that.
Okay. Very good.
If that's okay with the court members, then we'll begin with that. And we'll begin that process once we get to the administrative section.
All right. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of September the 1st.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Okay, we're going to have to get some voting done here. Commissioner Fickus, would you like to please vote? Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, we're not hearing you. Is that because I hadn't got him turned up, or?
No.
We heard you a few minutes ago. You found a way to mute yourself. I didn't do it, I promise.
Judge did it.
I think that was a yes, and
That was a yes.
the motion passes unanimously. Oh, these are interesting times. If only I had that power to mute. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval of consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, a week ago to item B under briefing. This concerns presentation as it relates to the City of River Oaks Tax Increment Finance and Reinvestment Zone Number 1. Ms. McMillan is here to lay that issue out before the court.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners.
Morning.
The City of River Oaks has established a 157-acre tax increment reinvestment zone located along the city's main commercial corridor, which is along River Oaks Boulevard from Jacksboro Highway to Sam Calloway Road. The TERS was established to facilitate the development and redevelopment of the commercial, retail, and other mixed-use areas within this zone, and expected to raise the taxable value within the zone from currently at $41.6 million up to approximately $343 million over the 30-year life of the zone. I'm going to have Kurt McDaniel and Trent Petty are here from Petty and Associates, and then also Marvin Gregory, City Manager of River Oaks, and Dan Chisholm, Council Member from River Oaks, are also here today. And I'm going to turn it over to these representatives to give you an overview of their plans for the River Oaks TERS.
You realize that if you had not been here and it had just been Trent, he would have been here all day.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You can lift that mic up. Thanks, sir. Good morning, Honorable Judge and Commissioners Court. My name is Kirk McDaniel, and I'm here with Petty and Associates, the Economic Development Consultant for the City of River Oaks. I have with me also Trent Petty, Dan Chisholm, Council Member for City of River Oaks, and City Manager Marvin Gregory, City of River Oaks. Thank you for your time today and for moving us up. Appreciate it. The River Oaks TERS was first created in 2018 and was about 153 acres, and then it was amended in late 2019 to include about 4 additional acres. And if we go to the next page, you can see the... Sorry about that. You can see the TERS boundary amendment with the circled areas. It primarily is going over the commercial corridor of 183 as well as this primary town center area. And you can see the 2 little sections of acres that were included in the 2019 amendments. As I go to the next slide, this is the future land use plan that the city adopted after the creation of the TERS, which includes a new community mixed-use area in that town center area, and that's why we went back and amended the TERS, was so that it included the full community mixed-use area, as well as this set of parcels opposite it on the other side of 183. These are the areas most likely to be developed and redeveloped over the term of the TERS, and so we wanted to be sure that they were all included as future projects occur. So if I can zoom in on this next slide, you can see this zooms in on the community mixed-use district. It's about 42 acres, and the most pivotal piece of this is the extension of the meandering road connecting that west side of the city all the way up to 183. This creates some new economic development opportunities, especially from those hard corners right in the center of that new downtown, town center type area. And there's lots of different benefits that occur from having those hard corners and having this new community mixed-use district, as outlined on that slide. If I go to the next page, this is the projected incremental value from the TERS. As Ms. McMillan said, it's a $41.6 million base as established by the Tarrant Appraisal District. This is just showing the incremental value, so it shows it going up to $301 million, but that net taxable value would be that $343 million that she had referenced earlier. If you look to the next slide, we have the results of our feasibility study that was performed. I'll move that down. Showing the different participation rates, the existing taxable value, the new taxable value, as well as the annual revenues that will occur in the last year of the TERS term. The cities include sales tax and property tax, whereas the counties is just the property tax there. This next slide shows the anticipated projects within the project and finance plan. First, we anticipate some new infrastructure for the community mixed-use district of about $2 million as a development is occurring there. Afterwards, the city also has a already approved and adopted drainage improvement study that indicates about $3.7 million. That was approved in 2003. And then lastly, in 2016, there was a River Oaks Boulevard corridor master plan that included lots of different improvements in different phases for that River Oaks 183 commercial corridor that they have. And so we have outlined and put into the project and finance plan line items for those projects as well. So that's primarily what the TERS plan will go towards, TERS revenues will go towards throughout that term. So on this last slide, I have the total cumulative contributions over the term. It's about $25 million for the city, $8.6 for the county, and then the college district is $3.2 million. And this revenue, as I said, would go towards the projects outlined earlier. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but if not, that concludes my briefing.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to recap, the county is being asked to participate at 75% over the 30-year life, and we're estimating that it would be approximately $8.6 million. The hospital district will not be participating. It will just be the city of River Oaks and Tarrant County. And if there aren't any objections to that, we will move forward and work with them and bring back a tax increment reinvestment zone participation agreement back to Commissioner's Court. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks good to me.
So, Your Honor, at this point, we were going to go into our public hearings. I think we're going to wait to see if we have audience participation forms. It's 10:15, which is the cutoff, so we'll know if anyone wants to make a comment or not. I do have some comments myself as relates to several of these public hearings, and while we get that information, I'm going to go ahead and make some comments. So, members of the court, if we can go to the public hearings, and on item 7A, this is a public hearing to consider salaries of certain elected county and precinct officials contained within Tarrant County government's fiscal year 2021 budget. There's a requirement that the county post in a newspaper general circulation the proposed salaries. And I would like to point out one thing on the postings. Whenever we post these, we always make sure that in the titles of the postings, we use the term proposed annual maximum salaries. And what that means is that sets a cap. And it means that the court can go up to that cap, or it can maintain what the salary level that we have now. Over the last couple of days, weeks actually, I've had conversations with several of you as it relates to the salary issue for elected and appointed officials. And my recommendation to the court is that if you would like to have discussion or comments as it relates to this particular topic before we open it up to a public hearing, I would suggest that you do that at this point. We're not going to take action on this at this agenda item. You can make your comments, receive public input, and then when it comes to the administrator's section, there is an agenda item where that you can vote on this particular issue. So if the court has any comments that they would like to make now, or any direction that you would like to give before you hear public comments, now's the time to do that.
I'll go ahead and open the public hearing and then give our court members an opportunity to make any comments they wish to make, as GK just outlined. And then we'll take comments from the public that are here, and then we will later in the agenda, under the administrator's section, point A, number 1, we will actually vote on whatever we decide to do at that time. So at this time, any comments that anybody would like to make?
Yes, I'd like to make some comments. These are extraordinary times.
that we are living through. I say living through because we will get through this to the other side. There's nothing about this pandemic that we expect to be a permanent condition in America. But while we are going through this pandemic, there's a lot of pain in our community. Our economy has suffered. People have lost jobs. In many companies across our county and across America, wages have been frozen, if not cut. Our children are not in school, which I firmly believe is to the detriment of our children. Our children learn best in a classroom with a teacher. Unfortunately, that's not a decision that this court can make. A decision that this court can make, however, is to share the pain with our constituents. Consequently, I am in favor of not giving any elected official pay raises this fiscal year. Now, I have not done a survey of the elected officials who are impacted by this decision. But as one who is impacted by this decision, I want to tell you that I am grateful to have a job. And I am grateful that I am well paid for doing that job. Emphasis on the word job, because this is not just some political office that we hold. None of these office holders are purely holding a political position. They all have full-time responsibilities. Every one of these elected officials has full-time responsibilities. It's a job. As for the commissioners, we build roads. We don't just sit up here and pontificate about public policy. We build roads. We each supervise between 40 and 60 people personally and preside over a budget between $3 and $4 million to build roads in our precincts. This is a job that has overarching political and public policy responsibilities. But we're paid well for doing our jobs. And I'm willing to forego an increase for this year. Once I decided I was willing to forego that increase, I found out that there are 4 people in my precinct, my senior staff, whose salary is directly tied to mine. So in foregoing my increase, I'm actually foregoing theirs as well. But I've talked with each one of my staff members who is affected, and they agree with me that we need to have some skin in the game with the people that we represent. So at the appropriate time, I will be supporting not giving salary increases to any elected officials for this coming fiscal year. Thank you, Judge.
You bet. Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Fickus.
Okay. Well, Commissioner Brooks, thank you for doing an excellent job of explaining part of what a commissioner does in Tarrant County. And as we all know, there's numerous other areas that we're also involved with that are, quote, have nothing to do with politics, but have to do with getting the job done. A year ago, I also opposed the budget and the raises 1 year ago and voted against it. And that would be my position again this time. We have many people throughout the county who are our constituents who are hurting. I talk to them all the time, which is another thing our office does, constituent services, and visiting with people in the community. It's obvious to me, and has been, that a raise for elected officials is just not in the question. It's not going to happen this time around, and so that will be reflected in my vote. So thank you.
Commissioner Johnson, would you like to say anything at this time?
No, but I agree with the Commissioner Brooks's recommendation. No elected official raises this year, and no change to the salary and our staff that are tied to our salaries.
Everybody's coming back onto the main session now. We're going to be in this session for just 5 minutes. So I know that
Okay.
Like I said, these are differing times. Well, over the past week and over the past several weeks, we've gotten a lot of calls. My office and my staff have been here since day one. We've never closed the office. We've always been there and responding to calls and talking with folks. And I will say that I agree with what we're going to do here today. My staff has come in and they understand that that there are consequences to them also. I want to thank the department heads. I want to thank the elected officials in Tarrant County, because as a bean counter, one of the things I do is I get into the numbers. And so I've said this over the years, if you look at Tarrant County as compared to the other big urban counties, Harris, Houston, Travis, Austin, Bear, San Antonio, Dallas, El Paso, and Tarrant, what you find is the number of county employees per 1,000 citizens. Tarrant County is the lowest. We have about 2.1, 2.13 employees, county employees per 1,000 residents. The next closest one to us is Dallas, and they have 2.53 employees per 1,000. Now, what does that mean? If we were at the same level as Dallas County is, we would have an additional 826 employees. And that would cost the taxpayers on an annual basis about $66 million a year. If you look at the county that is the highest, it's Travis County. They have about 4.29 employees per 1,000. That means if we were at that level, we would have an additional 4,500 employees in Tarrant County. So I want you to hear those numbers and remember those numbers as you talk with folks who are the department heads, who are the elected officials, the budget, and this Commissioners Court, because we are very, very stingy with the tax dollars that you give us and with the tax dollars we ask from you. If we were at the same level of Travis County, which has a population of about 1.2 million, we would have 4,537 additional employees, and it would cost you about $365 additional million in taxpayer dollars. So my employees came, as we sat down and as we talked about this, they were in agreement that they felt fortunate to have a job. They felt fortunate to live in Tarrant County, and that they certainly had no problem with a decision not to give elected officials and those people who are affected by that any additional salary increases for the year. But I hope you do thank, again, the folks who run the various departments, the various elected officials who do have full-time jobs, as Commissioner Brooks outlined, for the way they are very stingy with your tax dollars. Because, again, as I said, the closest one to us we would be collecting an additional $66 million from the citizens of Tarrant County if we were just at that level. So it makes a big difference. We take that very seriously. And so as we move through this today, please hear that we do understand where we are and the consequences, and we do, and we have from the very beginning of the COVID outbreak to do everything we can to help the citizens of Tarrant County.
Judge, can I point out one more thing, please, sir?
Sure.
The way we, as a court, build the county budget every year is to look at our employees, which is our most precious asset, and decide what we're going to do with those employees. What, we've got 4,500 or so employees?
About 45, almost 4,500.
Almost 4,500 employees across the county. We decide what raises we're going to give them first before we decide another dollar that we're going to spend. We take care of our employees first. So our pool of employees, except for elected officials and those who are tied to those elected officials, our overall pool of employees is going to get a raise. The majority of them will get between 3 and 6% raise this fiscal year. So we are supporting our employees, we are supporting their families, we are supporting their ability to continue to contribute to this economy, and we're also supporting our ability to maintain them as Tarrant County employees, because if we don't pay them, then they're going to find somebody who will, and we will have just lost the years and years and years of investment we have made in training and empowering and promoting those employees to higher and higher levels of responsibility. So just because we're not giving elected officials a raise does not mean that our employees are not being taken care of. They are.
Okay, the first, yes, ma'am. Come forward. I don't think elected officials, do they have to fill out an audience participation form in a public hearing? Probably not. Come on forward.
You're the judge.
Good morning, Court. My name is Wendy Burgess. As you know, I'm your tax assessor collector. I'm honored to be an elected official. I'm also honored to receive a paycheck for running a business that collects $5 billion a year for Tarrant County and the surrounding entities. I'm happy to not take a raise this year, and I'm very glad that Commissioner Brooks clarified, because I was going to take exception to the fact that my employees would not be able to have a raise. So thank you so much for that clarification. I appreciate that, because it is the women and men that work in our departments. I happen to have approximately 208 offices countywide, and they have also been here. We have never closed the doors. We have worked behind closed doors, and just as our sheriffs and our jailers and Mary Louise's group, we've all been working through all of this. So I want to say thank you very much. I appreciate to the public, for the opportunity to do this job. However, moving forward, I'd like for you to remember that just a year and a half ago, judges and others got dramatic raises when they had only held office for less than 6 months. So I'd like for you to consider that moving forward in the future. Nothing against judges whatsoever, but I think that as Tarrant County, we are Tarrant County strong. We are a team, we are a family, and I believe that we all need to be treated equally. Thank you.
Commissioner Fickus?
Yes, I just wanted, again, I want to thank all of our employees for the great job they've done during this time, and I especially want to thank our law enforcement for the great job they've done, because life has not been easy if you're a law enforcement officer right now. And I appreciate all that you've done, and you guys are great, and just keep doing the great job you're doing. Thank you.
Okay, the first audience participation that I have is Miriam Lambert. Good morning.
Hi. Thank you for letting me speak. Commissioner Brooks kind of stole my thunder. You know, in the People's Magazine where they have two women and they go, who wears this dress best? Commissioner Brooks did this speech best. But I would like to comment on the fact that I totally am appreciative for y'all's service, as well as the policemen. I don't know who these people under you, I don't know their job description, that y'all are giving the 3 to 6% raise. And I don't begrudge that, but I kind of do this year because there's so many. I have a son who's a property manager. Property taxes are going up. You can't evict someone. So people can't pay rent. They still have to pay mortgages. So I have a nephew that's a bartender. He's got no income. There are plenty of people in our community that have no income that are struggling during this tumultuous year. And your employees are extremely valuable. But I suppose they're being paid by taxpayer money. At some point, the taxpayers' pockets are empty, and the ship's going to sink. You can only take so much from people that don't have jobs or can't collect rent and still have to pay higher property taxes. It's a sad situation, and I don't propose to know all of the answers. And I admire y'all tremendously, both for your job and for not taking a raise, but I'm still concerned about the 3 to 6% raise. I appreciate y'all. Take that into consideration, and please remember those that during this last 7 months have lost everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lambert. Next is Jesse Taylor.
Thanks, everyone. Hey, my name is Jesse Taylor. I'm precinct chair of this 1297 Tarrant County Republican Party. Giving honors to the commissioners, Commissioner Brooks, Wally, Willie. I thank you for saying that today, Commissioner Brooks. And I think everyone else followed suit as far as the officials are concerned. My phone kind of blew up this past month, being the precinct chair, and everybody concerned about the pay raises of the commissioners, and so today when I came here, I came here thinking that everybody was trying to get a pay raise. So when you said that, it kind of eased not only my tension, I think everyone in the audience tensions also, when Commissioner Brooks said, okay, look, we're going to stand down this time. But just like the young lady said, about 3 to 6%, if you do give them, and I understand we need good police officers, we need good citizens within Tarrant County, but they need to recognize we are in a pandemic right now. There's a lot of people that lost their jobs. A lot of people don't have no income at all. So if we are going to take taxpayers' dollars, at least get the minimum at that 3%, not no 6. You do the minimum, So being that said, and y'all not in agreement. Y'all in agreement with not trying to get a pay raise for this fiscal year. My speech is over. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Charleston White.
Good afternoon, Judge Whitley. Commissioner Brooks, man, I voted against you every time you run. I wanted to replace you with Roy Lozano. And this is my first time attending a commissioner's court meeting. But man, you won my heart. I wanted to come in here and tell you guys that there's two sides of the law, and I know you guys studied law, that there's the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. And I saw the spirit of the law today. 3% to 6% raise given to our officers during what we're going through. I think they deserve it. We've seen buildings burn. We've seen law enforcement killed live on Facebook trying to protect a pawn shop during a riot in another city from here. Our law enforcement officers, the jails, they're facing something that we've never seen before in all of my years of living. Seems like everyone is against them, and I once was anti-police until I started meeting people and seeing that there's a human side behind that badge. And oftentimes elected officials don't get to be seen as human. And I'm glad I got an opportunity to see you guys as human today. So you got my vote next come around, Mr. Bruce, man. I didn't expect this.
That's November.
I also work as an election judge for the Republican Party as well. So to see this act of kindness, this act of generosity, after the pastor prayed that you guys receive wisdom. And so though you don't get an increase in pay, I see you guys are increased in wisdom. You're increased in stature, and you're increased with favor with men. And I know that's somewhere in the Bible. So I just want to say thank you guys.
Thank you, Mr. White. Devin Pikes.
Hello.
Pikes.
I was coming to oppose the pay increase today, but I appreciate your opposing it yourself, so that does half the work for me. But I did oppose it on more than just the situations of Corona. There's a couple of things recently that I really didn't agree with, especially the threatening of church leaders if they didn't close their churches with fines and jail time. I think that was inexcusable, and for that reason, additionally, I don't think you deserve a pay raise. Thank you.
I do want you to understand that we never did what you just suggested.
Well, there's video. There's
Well, go
video
ahead.
of it.
I mean, no, there's not video. And
Okay,
the reason I
that's
say
fine.
that is because we were never able to, we were told from the get-go, nor would we have done that we could have any impact upon church services. So that never happened. And I will tell you that I've had many conversations with the bishops of the Methodist Church and of the Catholic diocese, and they closed their churches down before there was even a suggestion of a stay-at-home order.
Well, that's their decision, not yours.
Well, that's correct. It exactly is. And so for you to get up there and say that we threatened the churches is a totally inaccurate statement.
No, it's
And you don't
it's
have a
accurate.
video of it.
I'll find it and send it to you.
You go right ahead and do that.
All right.
Carol Woodworth. It's a comment. Okay, she's coming up here telling me that. Dear Commissioners, I do not support salary increases. In addition to comfortable salary, you already have auto and phone allowances as the general public tries to stay afloat after your economically crushing decisions this year relative to a virus. It is unbelievable that you would think of giving yourself a raise. Many people don't even have jobs or businesses anymore, yet you think it is okay to take their tax money and give yourself a raise. Vote no on raises. Next is Joan Cordell. I'm calling to vote no to a raise for the Tarrant County Commissioners. I am voicing my opinion as a resident here. I do not believe the Commissioners deserve a raise, much less every year. I don't want my property values to go up. I hope she means that she doesn't want her property taxes to go up. Actually, it would not even be the property value. You just raise the value of my home so that the taxes would go up to support this stupid raise of theirs. I'm definitely do not want the Tarrant County Commissioners to get a raise. Social Security doesn't even give a raise every year, which is ridiculous. So that's a big no. Next is Christina West. I oppose proposal to increase salaries and taxes during this time. Citizens are all working very hard to recover from the economic impact of COVID-19. Voting for salary increases and increased taxes during this exceptional time shows remarkable disconnect in leadership and is opposite of good stewardship of our taxpayer money. And I believe that is all that we have.
This is Sheila Redford.
Do we have a?
It's a call.
Lady with her hand up.
I have my one in there as well.
So there's one as relates to raises, and then there's others that relate to the budget. And we have a budget public hearing immediately after this public hearing.
So this is the one I was wanting with.
Okay.
And what's your name?
Karen Johnson.
Okay. Natalie, do you have Aaron Johnson's down there?
Karen.
Karen. Okay, Karen. Budget questions about the budget. Okay, so
Sorry,
you're,
but it's about this. Sorry.
okay, come on forward.
Hi there. I was here last week as well. Y'all answered my grievance is great, except for one thing. I am grateful that y'all are not going to give yourselves raises. But to speak on what she spoke on, you are essentially taking money from people that don't have jobs to give people that do have jobs, which is what you spoke about, Commissioner Brooks, that all of the Tarrant County employees have jobs. They haven't stopped working. They've come every day. They've received their salary, and they are continuing to work. Whereas I have many friends in the oil and gas industry who have stopped working. The day that this happened, they stopped working, and they have not started back working. And they don't have money in their pockets to give more taxes, to give the employees who have had jobs this entire time a raise. So I think that everybody should just be grateful for the job that they have and the salary that they have currently, and wait another year to be able to have a raise. I will say, to your point as well, you said that you do not have any control over the schools going back, and then the man that spoke about the churches. Everything is connected. And I was here last week and I listened to Vinny give the numbers on what is happening with COVID. And everything was positive. Everything was good. Everything was under the original benchmark of 10% positivity rate. Everything was going down. All of the things that were said by this court that would be what we start to open things back up, open the economy back up, get kids in school, all of those things. And because when I listened to the numbers, Vinny was very negative about the positive positive information. He said he was weary almost after every single graph he talked about. I'm weary of the positive numbers. I'm weary. And Fort Worth ISD listens to y'all. They listen to Vinny about the numbers, and then y'all report the numbers, and then the board decides on whether or not the schools are going to open. And if the board decides not to open the schools, then the churches decide not to open the children's programs because they follow Fort Worth ISD. And then you have just a connected line of people that can't do their jobs based on one person reporting numbers to this commissioner's court, that it affects everything. And so my ask is that we really take into consideration what's going on with this economy, what's going on with the lack of jobs, and take all of that into consideration whenever you're thinking about taking money from people who have no jobs to give it to people who do have a job and have had a job throughout this entire pandemic. So that was it.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Oh, and I have one more question. I'm so sorry. There's one item I wanted to ask you about, and it's in Vinny's budget. There's one line item. It's under 595055, and it says it's undesignated. And I was wondering if you could give me clarity on that. It says in 2019 that $0 were used towards it, and in 2020 they appropriated $190,166 to the fund, or to the undesignated line item. And then in 2020, at year to date, y'all have used $0, or he's used $0 of it. But the 2021 request is for $259,890. And I was wondering if y'all could answer a question as to what that line item is for and why no money is being used, but yet almost double the amount has been appropriated.
Helen, is that the place where you put the salary increases and then it's spread out after?
No, sir, that is undesignated, and the expense will never happen under that line item. There are no expenses. If they need additional money up in other line items, that's where that money comes from.
So it's just being taken out of the taxpayers' money in case they need it.
It is a part of the budget, and when you look at our total, basically our revenues match our expenses.
Right.
And so what we're basically saying is here's the revenue that's coming in based upon our estimates that we get from the auditor's office. And what we're saying is that we believe that in the COVID world and on a normal year there may be unexpected things, and so we always try to have set aside a little bit of funds so that when and if those unexpected things come up, we've got some funds there to do that with.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for hearing me. I really hope that y'all think about the impact y'all have, even though you say Commissioner Brooks, that y'all do not have any decision-making in all of this. I really hope that you do see that you actually do. Y'all have extreme influence on what happens with Fort Worth ISD, with
And Ms. Johnson,
schools
your
and
3 minutes
churches.
or
So thank you very much.
So at this time, I'm going to close this segment of our public hearing, and we will move to the next public hearing.
Members of the court, we can go to 7B. This concerns the public hearing for the Tarrant County government's fiscal year 2021 budget. Let me talk a little bit about that budget. The roll-up categories are highest level cost centers for that budget. For the general fund, it's $629,046,772. Road and Bridge Fund is $37,221,886, and the Debt Service Fund, which is $35,219,108, for a total of $701,487,766. As we get to that particular item in the administrator section, there is a significant breakdown as far as how those monies are allocated. And one of the things that I would like to point out as it relates to our budget today is that one of the things that we tried to do was to try to hold down the expenditures as it relates to what is known as a no new tax rate. And the tax rate that we are eventually going to ask you to approve to support this particular budget is below the no new tax rate. And so what does that mean? That means whenever you factor out the tax levy on new property, that this budget, as far as revenue that is taken out of that is collected from those properties that were taxed last year, is approximately $3.6 million less, and that's why it comes in underneath the no new tax rate. That does mean also that with the monies that we brought in from new construction, that we will have a slight increase in the amount of revenue that we bring in. However, it is the aspect of what happens when you have new construction in a county or city, and that has allowed us to bring in just slightly a little bit more. But as it relates to those properties that were taxed last year, actually the amount of money that we're collecting from all of those properties collectively is about $3.6 million less than what we had this year. And so with that, Your Honor, we would ask that you conduct this public hearing.
Mr. Maynews, question. What was our budget carry forward from last year?
Helen.
In cash?
Yes.
Budget carry, approximately $96 million.
And that $96 million represents all of those reserve funds built into the budget in case something happens. Nothing happened, so we carried it over from year to year.
Awesome.
That's correct. In the reserve fund that we have, just the reserve fund for this current tax year is $65 million. So that, Your Honor, we ask that you open the public hearing.
This time I'll open the public hearing, and we'll do as we did previously. If there's any comments that anyone would like to make before we get into that, we can do that. This is where we will get into, this is where the department heads, the elected officials really have their impact as they go through the year. We do appropriate money every year through, I think, the oversight, and as I said, the effective and efficient folks that we have. I believe that they bring their budgets in. Historically, they have always brought their budgets in for less than what we had approved. We've talked this morning about salaries. We've talked about raises, not raises just for us, or not having raises for us, but also we've heard your comments. I've heard your comments with regards to the departments. As I said, my employees came in and said they were more than willing to defray an increase, and that helped from that standpoint. I would encourage all the department heads, I would encourage all of the elected officials as they go about evaluating their employees to consider 3%, as Commissioner Brooks indicated. He indicated 3 to 6. I would encourage the department heads to look at the possibility of just 3 and potentially let them look and decide how they want to go about doing that, as they always do. So, go ahead.
Good morning, Mayor Louise, Tarrant County Clerk. Does the Commissioner Court have the option to limit us at a 3% and just make it a flat 3% and let us go from there, or are you letting every department head have that option?
What I just proposed was to basically allow the department heads and the elected officials to have that option.
But do you hold the authority to just make that a vote for the court to take?
We certainly could.
I have a suggestion.
Hold it. No, these are the elected officials, so we'll get to you in a minute. Mr. Wilder?
Judge and Commissioners, I'd just like to get a couple of things on record. We're going to turn back to the county somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000 in unspent money this year, which I've done every year for the 25 years I've been in office. We just swore in 6 new deputies this morning to unfilled vacancies. We've been running 20% turnover. And just as Commissioner Brooks said earlier, if we don't pay them, somebody else will. And when you look at the management job, I know all of us suffer from high turnover. The employee surveys that are done by Korn Ferry and another company under another name have never shown us to be at par with the market. So I hope you will vote the employees a raise so that maybe I can compete with other folks out there who are darn sure hiring them. None of these people are going home and sitting at home. They're going to work somewhere else. So we have that competition, and everything that we do, as I think most of you know, is mandated by the legislature. It's not an optional. I don't have optional things. So I think my colleagues might agree with me, and I hope you'll allow the employees to have a raise and let us decide based upon I use the PFP scores. For the top 25% gets more than the bottom 25%, which I think is a fair way to do it, because PFP means pay for performance, as you know. Thank you.
I do know that most department heads recommend typically 3%. I know that in law enforcement, we have some different scales that are used. They have a STEP program, and I believe this year we were looking at the STEP program, which is 3% when they are evaluated, and they're evaluated between October 1st and next October or September 30th. They get an evaluation, and after that evaluation, they get their 3% step increase, which could, for half of them, it's going to be after the year's half gone. But we were also looking at a 2% salary increase. Structure increase. I would still certainly not want to do anything that would alter that for law enforcement, and I would certainly support giving the department heads as they've had the authority to utilize their discretion on the raises. But again, I know in my office we typically are dealing with 3%. So, and then of course I've got employees that won't get anything, but those that are tied to my salary. So.
All right, at this time we'll open for public comment. I have Fran Rhodes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Some of you probably remember me. I come here almost every year to these meetings where you approve tax rates and budgets, and I'm back again. In the past, I'm always begging you to adopt a tax rate and a budget that will be at or below the no new revenue rate. So I was very pleased to see this year that you have done that. Thank you very much. It's only slightly below the no new revenue rate, but it is below. And I will tell you, I was primarily coming here today to speak on the pay increases. And I think I did sign my form that way, Judge Whitley. I said both Section A and B. But y'all's comments at the beginning of that hearing sort of blew that out of the water. So I'm very happy to hear that you are rejecting those pay increases for yourselves, for your top staff, and for the other elected officials. I will take a little bit of exception, though. I don't think y'all should pat yourselves on the back too quickly for not taking a pay increase and for being here every single day of the pandemic, doing your job. That's a privilege that many people don't have because of y'all's executive orders and the governor's executive orders. A lot of people would love to be going to their job and they're not allowed to do it because their job is gone or their job's on hold or whatever the reason. So I guess I just take exception with that attitude that I'm hearing. The other thing is that if you want to compare Tarrant County to counties like Dallas and Travis and say that we're doing a better job than they are in terms of the number of employees per thousand population, that does not impress me either. If Tarrant County can't do better than counties like Travis and Dallas, then we're in real trouble.
2 minutes.
Thank you. Anyway, I appreciate the fact that you are rejecting pay increases, but I agree with everybody else that has said I'd like you to keep in mind the fact that you and your staff have jobs. You've had jobs throughout the entire pandemic, and many people either don't have jobs or they're not getting pay increases, and yet taxpayers still have to pay those taxes whether we have a job or not. And you did nothing in this budget and this tax rate really to give taxpayers any relief at all. Thank you.
Shelley Redford, comment. Mr. Menges, do you want to read?
I'll be more than happy to, Your Honor. This comment is from Shelley Redford. I would like my voice to be heard as far as discussion and talk in my city in Richland Hills. There was going to be a vote to increase taxes across Tarrant County and a pay raise increase to the Commissioner's Court. I am all about people being tended to and taken care of and needs met if they've done a job and not had a raise in a long time and it is merit. I'm not sure that this is the most appropriate time with so many people struggling right now across Tarrant County. My husband has been furloughed from work, has been since March. It is supposed to be through October, possibly December. Unemployment has run out. I am self-employed. We are doing everything we can. My biggest concern is if this is not just a rumor and it is true, I plead with the Commissioners Court to revisit this next year and table this for now in order to help support the citizens of Tarrant County instead of their own personal pockets.
And then next is Sharon Lovell. I believe that also is a comment.
This is from Ms. Sharon Lovell. I am very dismayed would have a budget meeting the day after Labor Day during the day when most people can't come or are still returning from the holiday. The 3% raise is pretty. I can't even fathom how someone can give themselves a raise when so many people are hurting and when the government has closed so many businesses down. I just heard the Swiss pastry shop can't hold on much longer because a 50% capacity and such a small business, they are not making any money. Open this place up. Give people their life back. It's political suicide if you vote yourselves a 3% raise. This is just ridiculous when so many people are hurting that you would have the arrogance and audacity to do that. Just my opinion, but there are a lot of people that feel the same way.
One comment I will make regarding a couple of the comments that were in here, I would draw everyone's attention to the fact that the last order, with the exception of wearing of the masks, which I know there are a number of people who aren't excited about that order either, but with the exception of the wearing of the mask, Tarrant County has no other orders in place and has not had any other orders in place since April the 30th. We recognize the need to get businesses going again. That order is not ours. That order is the governor's order. We have not had an order in place with regards to businesses since April 30th. The masks is the only order that we have in place, and it's put in place because that's the authority that we're given, and we exercise that local authority. The other entities, the school boards, the boards of the private schools and of the church schools, are there to make those decisions. The city councils are there to make those decisions. That is what local control is all about, and I have long been an advocate of local control and will remain such. And that's why, as I made orders back before April 30th, we talked with one another. We talked with the cities. We talked with their mayors and their city managers, with the school boards, and with the school superintendents, with businesses. And we came up with the orders that I ultimately then ended up in signing. I talked to public health. Vinny will tell you over and over again that he would have loved for me to have gone further than I went. So while Vinny may influence, he is not the only individual that we have talked with. And so he is giving you his opinion and the public health authority's opinion. Ultimately, as elected officials, we have to take the responsibility for the decisions we make. The only decision that the county has right now that is in place is the one that is requiring you to wear the or the mask, That's it. So if you've got complaints about other things, you can certainly voice them here, but ultimately the results are going to be decided either at the schools or at the state or at the cities. So thank you very much. With that, we're going to close this public hearing.
Can I make a suggestion, please?
No. Not at this time. You've not signed up to speak at this time. So you'll be able to speak when that part of the agenda comes. The next, close the public hearing on the budget, and the next public hearing has to do with
Your Honor, both item C and D are both community development public hearings. Ms. Ward is here to speak to the court about each of those.
What did he say? These are public community development. Oh, okay. Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
This morning we're requesting the Commissioners Court conduct a public hearing to consider the draft Tarrant County Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, known as the CAPER, for program year 2019. This covers the Community Development Block Grant Funds, Home Investment Partnership Grant Funds, and ESG funds. It's basically our annual report. We have completed it. It's open for public discussion. The auditor reviews it, and then we submit it to HUD. So,
I'll open the public hearing. I have no audience participation forms, but is there anyone wishing to speak to this matter? There appearing to be none. We'll close the public hearing at this time.
we have one additional public hearing. And we're asking the Commissioners Court to conduct a public hearing to hear any public comments on Amendment Number 3 for the program year 2017 for the in 2018 for the Home Investment Program funds. We plan to change the scope of the original funds for the homeowner rehabilitation to community housing redevelopment organizations, CHODO's development. The county will reallocate $75,000 from PY 2017 to CHODO development funding for Housing Channel to construct 6 tiny homes for rent in Kennedale, Texas. Tarrant County will reallocate $375,000 from PY 18 for Development Corporation of Tarrant County for the acquisition and rehabilitation of 3 single-family homes. Do you have any questions?
Are there anybody here wishing to speak to this matter? I have no audience participation, so at this time I will close the public hearing. Any questions from the court? Okay, there being none, then Mr. Manning, sure, item is up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, if we could now go to the administrator section. On item number 1, this concerns the compensation expenses and allowances for certain elected county and public officials for fiscal year 2021. Just a note that we have followed all the legal requirements as it relates to the publication of this in a newspaper of general circulation, and we stand ready to act upon any motion in direction from the court.
I move that the compensation and expenses and allowances for elected county and precinct officers for fiscal year 2021 be set at the same level as they were set for fiscal year 2020.
Second. We have a motion and a second. I'd like to do some clarifying in there so that we had talked about that being that there would be no raises. I believe that we had increased the amount, and Robin, somebody from HR, have we not increased the amount of employee contribution rate on a monthly basis? And if we had, then this would prevent us from doing that, because it says we can't change that. I also want to make sure that from an expense standpoint that we clarify that's just with regards to compensation. I want to make sure that you're not freezing your precinct budgets at your current level.
You know, if you drop the words expense and other allowances and just say salary, it would solve that.
Well, it also includes car allowances.
Well, that's not changed. That was not proposed to change, but the amount of, I think the amount that we were paying for our health insurance was scheduled we were scheduled to pay more. And when you say expenses, there's a lot of expenses under y'all's budgets. And it doesn't. So I think if you just said we are not going to take any salary increases, that makes it very clear that we're not talking about anything but the elected officials' salaries.
So,
I don't think that this notice that we published has anything to do with our precinct budget expenses. It only has to do with the expenses associated with salary and benefits.
Well, I guess I would ask the DA, because your motion did not mention, I don't think, this notice or this schedule of deal. It
Yeah,
just
but I
said-
quoted it.
Where?
That's where the motion came from.
Where is it?
It is called, the agenda item is called.
Let's see what the attorneys have to say.
The agenda item says compensation expenses and allowances for certain elected county and precinct officers for fiscal year 2021.
So let's
and that's exactly
let's
what
get a
I
comment
said.
from the district
You said
attorney's
salaries instead of compensation.
Yes, please.
Okay.
And the statute doesn't mention necessarily expenses. I think there's two ways to fix this. First and foremost, it's simply the motion said salaries and allowances, as shown on the notice. I think that would be proper. Also, the notice itself states that the elected officials' salaries would be set on the 8th day of September 2020. So if you refer to the notice and leave out the word expenses, either way, you'll be statutorily proper, and I think that it will be sound as far as.
You approve?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, if we could now move to item number 2 under the administrator section. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the Tarrant County fiscal year 2021 budget at its highest level cost center and account group categories as follows. General Fund, $629,046,772. Road and Bridge Fund, $37,221,886. And Debt Service Fund, $35,219,108, for a total of $701,487,766.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
So we can move now to item number 3. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve Tarrant County government's tax rate for tax year 2020 as follows. Maintenance and operations would be .217448 per $100 valuation. Interest and sinking, which is debt service, at .016552 per $100 valuation, for a total tax rate of .234 per $100 valuation. As I said earlier, this tax rate is below the no new revenue tax rate.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we can now go to item number 4. This is the budget for the hospital district for fiscal year 2021. As you might recall, the hospital district appeared before the Commissioners Court last Tuesday and briefed the Commissioners Court, and discussion followed as it related to the hospital district's budget. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the Tarrant County Hospital District's fiscal year 2021 budget.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, we can go to item number 5. This concerns the hospital district's tax rate for tax year 2020. We're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the Tarrant County Hospital District's tax rate for tax year 2020 as follows. .22349 for maintenance and operation per $100 valuation. For interest and sinking, which is debt service, would be .000939 per $100 valuation, for a total tax rate of .224429 per $100 valuation. This tax rate, as is the county's tax rate, is below the no new revenue tax rate.
Move for approval of tax rate from the hospital district.
Second.
The motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
The next two deal with Emergency Services District number 1, and I'm going to ask Mr. Singleton to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're asking your approval to receive and file the Tarrant County Emergency Services District number 1 budget for fiscal year 2021. It is based on the same tax rate that has been in existence. It keeps all level of funding the same. It will also start the process of replacing one of the tankers, one of the 9 tankers that the district currently owns, and also starting a replacement of brush trucks that have been deployed throughout the county. The budget is about $6.6 million, including reserve funds that are used for equipment replacement.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Now we're asking you to approve the tax rate for the Tarrant County Emergency Services District number 1 for tax year 2020. The maintenance and operation tax rate of 8.19 cents per $100 of evaluation. And there's interest and sinking fund of 0. The district does not have any debt. It cash funds all its purchases. So we're asking that the court approve a total tax rate of 8.19 cents.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
I think we're going to take about a 5-minute recess. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Now we can come back to our agenda. As we move forward into this, we're now going to talk about public health-related issues, and I'm going to ask Mr. Tenasia to come up and address the court at this time.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the court. Back here again to go over our emerging health issues briefing. So just to start you off with the situational awareness on West Nile. Things continue to progress. We have now 14 reported human cases of the West Nile virus in Tarrant County, including 3 reported deaths. 9 of these cases are from northeast Tarrant County, which seems to be the hotspot for mosquito activity and now for human activity as well. More investigations are underway. Just as with last week, I think I had talked about 3 potential reports. 2 of them were confirmed. I believe there's 3 more potential reports being worked on as of this morning. Mosquito traps continue to test positive for West Nile at the highest levels we've seen in a long time. Northeast part of Tarrant County still seems to have a disproportionate number, but it can be explained. Densely populated, lots of trees, creeks and streams, a lot of green belt. So the topography, the way the layout is for the land, if you will, is very different and is very conducive to mosquito activity. With the trees, there's a lot of birds, and that's kind of the target these mosquitoes have for feeding, and that explains why. Public Health has issued a West Nile warning almost over a month ago, or a little bit more than that, on an impending human outbreak. We're heading that way. We've recommended that the spray zones be increased and the spraying frequency be increased by our city and other vendors who provide West Nile spraying. So city partners have done that, our vendors have done that. It is a costly and resource-intensive method to do ground spraying on a repeated basis on an increased frequency for this long of time. Public Health has relaunched the Be Mosquito Free educational campaign that we had developed in 2016. So a lot of those social media and other messages are running, informing the public of the dangers of West Nile. So those are some of the summary situational awareness things for West Nile. And then what is our mosquito data continuing to show? If you look at the chart on the left-hand side on the top corner, the positivity pool, even though it took a little bit of a dip due to recent rains, remains quite high, and we're trending back upwards, about 30% or more positivity rate on the entire county's mosquito pools. And if you look at the bottom left, that's northeast quadrant. At the peak, we had 58% of the pools testing positive. We're down significantly at about 39%. Because of the recent rains and some just weather changes. But it still is higher than the peak that we saw in 2016, which was a pretty rough year for us, for West Nile. So all in all, the data is still pretty grim. On the right-hand side, there's charts about vector index, and they're continuing to show high activity as well. So we've talked about what other things can be done. One of the considerations is aerial application of some different chemicals, and why aerial spraying. It is highly effective in reducing the mosquito population over a large area. It tends to have a knockout effect. It will help mitigate the spread of West Nile illness among humans. It reaches areas where truck-based or ATV-based spraying can't reach. Typically those areas in the backyards where people back up to a green belt or they have a creek or stream or a lot of land in the back with trees. Those areas are hard to reach. And then the chemicals that are used are different. So on ground-based spraying, typically we use pyrethroids. They're very effective, but when you go to aerial, you try to change a chemical so that we don't overspray with one particular chemical and breed mosquitoes that are resistant to that chemical. Secondly, we use a chemical called organophosphate, or Naled. It's an organophosphate. The idea is it's a heavier substance which tends to penetrate vegetation when sprayed from the air. And that way you get a lot of that knockout effect that we're looking for over a large area. It has been shown to be effective in breaking the West Nile virus cycle and has been used several times, even in Texas. We've had, as recently when Hurricane Harvey was there, they used it over a wide area, lots of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres. And it degrades very quickly in the sunlight, so we usually do the applications late into the night where, very few people are out and pets are not there. Usually announcements are made to have them inside. The amount used for aerial application is usually very, very low. Typical application is about a tablespoon and a half for area the size of a football field. And the idea is because the target is really just mosquitoes. We're not really targeting anything bigger than that, so just a small amount works well. So here's what we're looking at. Northeast Tarrant County, this is sort of our suggested spray zone. As you can see, it covers pretty much most of Northeast Tarrant County. Those big red dots, they indicate mosquito traps that have been testing positive repeatedly throughout this season. So, at this point, I think that's one of the recommendations that we're looking at is to have that option be considered for aerial spraying. We've been doing our due diligence with our city partners. There's some interest there as well. So that's sort of the briefing on West Nile. I'd be happy to pause here and answer any questions you may have.
I think that red dot's on top of my house, Vinny.
Maybe, yes, sir. Yes,
is that's the biggest red dot?
I think the biggest one is right there on top.
So let me just make a few comments on this. We do have something on the agenda later on as relates to this. We're going to be asking you all to give us authority to spray in this particular area. With that being said, and we'll cover it a little bit more whenever we get to that agenda item, we've been working with all the municipalities, city managers in this area, and our goal is to split the costs of that aerial spraying. The county pick up half, and then the cities pick up the other half, and that based on, it's a pro rata based on population. So we'll be talking with you about that a little bit later today as relates to this item.
How significantly different is this suggested spray zone from the balance of the county?
Very different, sir. So a lot of this activity is concentrated in the Northeast. We've had some pockets that lit up for a while in Southeast Tarrant County, and it's gone back to somewhat reasonable levels now. Those rain events do help. I mean, there's some rain events coming this week, so we'll continue to observe the data. We won't take any action that's not needed, but certainly, despite the rain events and changes in weather pattern, the data has been consistently high on Northeast Tarrant County.
So this is a real hot zone?
It is a real hot zone, yes, sir.
All right.
Any other questions on West Nile? Okay. All right, so now to our COVID situational briefing. Global case counts continue to rise. The only big change is that India is now number 2. It's overtaken Brazil as the number 2 country. They've had a huge spike. U.S. continues to lead, unfortunately. Globally, we're at 6.3 million cases in the U.S., 189,000 deaths. Texas has 640,000 cases. That's about 10% of the total. And then 13.5 thousand deaths. So it's 13,500 deaths. And 5.7 million tests conducted total. I believe the viral tests out of those are about 5.2, 5.3 million. Tarrant County has about 43,000 cases, 500 and, actually the number says 576. I think we're going to report 6 more deaths this morning. And 37,000 deaths, recoveries from COVID-19 in Tarrant County. The chart on the right, I wanted to point out something. On Tarrant County, we showed 343,000 tests. That's only an increase of 6,000 from last week, I believe. But if you look at the bottom, pending assignment jumped almost 200,000. So I believe there's a lot coming from Tarrant County in that pending assignment number, because we're certainly a very large county and a lot of testing effort has been made in Tarrant County. So I believe some of those numbers are fluctuating again as they go through the assignments for where the data is coming from.
And again, this is where the state can enter in more than 100,000 tests per day?
This is above and beyond that. So they have it entered. They just haven't figured out which county these folks are. So that's a separate issue on how much information they can receive. And this is a separate issue on how to work through that information. I think I've explained before that when health departments, whether it's state or local public health, receive data from the lab, a lot of times it's not very clear where these people live. So it takes a while to work through some of that. It's part of that contact tracing effort. So they're experiencing the same thing. When they get direct feeds from the lab, sometimes it's unclear where this person's a resident of, and it takes a while to backtrack and figure that out.
Because one of the questions that I've had before was this big jump at TCU and whether those numbers were included in the Tarrant County numbers. And what you've said when I called you to ask you about this is those students are registered wherever they live.
Yes, sir.
So it's whichever county or state that they're coming from, not all 400 or 500 of them in Tarrant County.
Right. So I believe the total count is close to 900 for TCU. Yes, sir. So that's from March. And recent outbreaks since the campus opened, I think, has probably like 700 or so. But not everything's counted against Tarrant County because not everybody lives on campus or within the county. There are students that are commuters from other counties or maybe attending online registered from their home address. So the data is a little bit different when the health department reports it. But yes, overall, TCU's had a huge outbreak. Hopefully things are calming down as they're into second or third week of their session. But I think I shared a graph with y'all where they had a huge spike. I believe their students came back on campus around August 10th, and classes or campus opened on August 17th, and literally within a couple of days, they had a huge spike of cases. I believe the highest day was August 24th, where they had over 100 cases reported to their health center that does similar work that the health department does, only for their campus. So, and they're not alone. I mean, I'm sure you've read media reports of a lot of universities experiencing the same thing, anecdotal conversations with different people who have kids in college. They're all experiencing the same thing. Okay, so U.S. situational awareness. Again, this is just a graphical way to show what's happening. We are declining from a peak in July, 6.3 million cases, like I said. But as you can see towards the end, there's a little bit of a flat line. So that's a little concern, but overall good news that the cases have been declining for a while. Texas is trending lower. It's the second graph with an arrow. So we're certainly seeing a massive decline from the peak, which is great news. I don't see anything turning up in that particular chart, which always worries me, but this is good news. I like that Texas is declining. Here's just a bigger chart to show you that cases on the left are declining, and the positivity rate after a long time were below 10% in Texas. On September 6th, it was 7.24%, which is great news for Texas. We're finally heading down in the right direction. Hospital trends in Tarrant County, we continue to decline from the peak. I believe on this chart, which was from Saturday, we had 231 people in the hospital. Notice the last week or so, there's a little bit of a flat line on those bar graphs. So that's a little cause for concern, but overall, great reduction. At the peak, we were at 741 cases in the hospital. Now we're at 231, so that's a significant decline over the last couple of months. Occupancy rate is down back to where we were right before Memorial Day. So things are certainly good on that end. Case trends have been declining, but as you can see, last couple of weeks there was a little bit of a flat line and an uptick. Positivity rate gives me a little bit of a concern. We've been declining significantly for a long, long time. Just the last week or so, we had a little bump up. We're still below 10%. We were at 9% and then went up to 10 and back to 9. As you can see on a daily basis, there's a lot of fluctuation. There was a day that hit close to 18% positivity. So it gives me a little concern because those things are sometimes harbingers of bad news to come. But overall, if you look at the trend, still downwards, so we're staying optimistic. COVID-like illness, again, declining for a long time, but the last week we had a flat line. As you can see, those bars spiked above the 7-day moving average. So that, again, gives me a little pause on what is coming. And coupled with the Labor Day holiday, I'm sure you've heard of media reports all across the country, people gathered in large groups despite all kinds of warnings. So that does, give us some concern to see what happens with the data. Overall, though, declining picture. We're in good shape right now. It just remains to be seen what the impact of the holiday is after this. Here's a school zone trend. Last week, we released a school dashboard as a tool to help decision makers, school boards, and parents alike to look at the information and understand what's happening in their school zones. As you can see, most of the county school zones are in yellow. That means their indicators have been declining for a while. Things are looking better. There are certain indicators that have not met their benchmark, so they're not in the green. In those areas, they could try hybrid learning. And again, this is just a recommendation. It's non-binding, where they could have some students in-person learning in the schools and some online, and that way giving themselves some room to practice social distancing and other safety measures. And very few school zones in Tarrant County, in particularly in Fort Worth School District, they have still indicators that are in the red, that case counts are high or other things are high enough where they might only want to try virtual learning or online learning. This data updates weekly. This week's update will happen today, I believe, and it will continue to update on a weekly basis. Again, it's a decision-making tool. A lot of interest. We went live with this, I think, Wednesday evening or Thursday morning. Had about over 18,000 people visit this particular dashboard. And that's about a $3,500 a day interest in just looking at the school dashboard itself.
Danny,
Yes, sir.
what are we doing to address these 3 hot spots on this map?
So this map is more a decision-making tool on understanding the school metrics. As far as addressing COVID-19 goes, it's through all the other tools, making sure enough testing is available, making sure that there's enough guidance available to the public on how to, mitigate the risk of COVID-19. As you all heard the discussion earlier, really there is no county order telling people, other than the educational guidance that we're giving, that continue to wear masks, maintain a distance from others 6 feet or more, and then avoid large gatherings as much as you can. Those are really the tools that are available to us at this point.
But are we putting any additional resources into these 3 hot spots?
Yes, sir. So testing capability certainly is one of the things. I mean, TCC South, I believe, falls into one of these zones.
Yes,
we have testing options available there. A lot of other testing sites in our partnership with Fort Worth. I believe in Fort Worth alone, we have about 11 sites total. There are 3 fixed locations, TCC South, J.P. Elder Middle School, and then Dickies Arena, and 8 mobile locations that rotate half day a week to different spots in Fort Worth. A lot of them do cover these hotspot areas. So that's one tool that we have available, make sure that the area has ample testing capability available so people who want to find out about their status have the ability to go get a test and find out if they're sick with COVID-19 or not. Other than that, very limited tool set available at this time other than public education. How do we continue to bend the curve? So we wear masks everywhere. That's the new CDC guidance, indoors and outdoors. Stay home as much as possible. That hasn't changed. Stay 6 feet away from others and avoid large group gatherings. And those are all the public health guidance measures that we have at this point. A lot of these are non-binding because those orders have been lifted. But again, the science hasn't changed, it works. And we can see that in our data when people follow that science, the numbers do come down. So that's all I have, and I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
Any questions?
I had a gentleman and his wife come up to me yesterday morning as I was leaving a breakfast restaurant. And we're complaining about the mask and made a comment that they're not doing any good, they don't work, and we don't really have a problem. The CDC says there's only been 9,000 deaths. Have you ever heard that number?
Yes, sir. There's been a lot of discussion about that. What CDC actually said, and our data mirrors that only about 6% of people had COVID alone as a reason listed among those deaths. About 94% of the 183,000 or so people that died had other underlying health conditions along with COVID. And that has been misconstrued and misunderstood that only 9,000 people died of COVID. That is not true. A lot of us have underlying health conditions. People have diabetes, blood pressure, heart disease, and they live fine and healthy lives despite those chronic conditions. When they got COVID, they got the complications because their body was weakened and they died. And that's been misattributed that, CDC is lying and only 9,000 people died of COVID. That is not true. All the 183,000, 184,000 have died of COVID. They just had underlying health conditions that complicated their health.
That's a pretty small number.
94% of the people had underlying health conditions, even in Tarrant County. That is correct. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, Vinny.
Okay, Your Honor, at this point, we can go to item number 8 under the Administrator section. This is discussion and possible action concerning declarations of local disasters regarding COVID-19. I do not believe that either the state or the county has issued an additional disaster order or executive order relating to that in the last week. I do know we do have some public comments that have been requested on this particular agenda item.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call on those folks at this time. First is Dawn Martin. She may be in the other room. We'll give her a couple of minutes to get here. Followed by Judith Shelton, followed by Amadeja Tosca, followed by Sherrod Perry. Are you Miss Martin?
Judith Shelton.
Okay, let's go ahead and come forward. If Miss Martin comes in the room, just ask her to stand at the back there.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to read something. My husband and daughter both tested positive for coronavirus. And as per recommendations, our family of 4 quarantined for the required time and more. We quarantined under the assumption that if 2 family members were positive, then we will all be positive and need to quarantine. Under quarantine, we took no distancing or other measures, operating as if all were positive. We learned, however, that the 2 positive family members were the only positive cases. The other 2 family members tested negative, and I also had a negative antibody test after quarantining in close proximity with positive carriers for multiple weeks. We have been led to believe that this is a highly contagious virus and that masks need to be worn when simply passing by other people in a store or walking to a table at a restaurant, etc. If we need these extreme measures to protect everyone, how could 2 members of my family not become infected while the quarantining in close proximity to positive family members? How can we eat dinner together every night or interact on a daily basis in close quarters without spreading the virus? How can I sleep in the same bed with my husband every night of the quarantine and not catch the virus myself? If we need masks to protect others in public, why would masks not make a difference at all in my scenario? You could write this off as our family being lucky, but it should at least make you think why we would agree to enact extreme measures on the citizens when for every reason you can give to wear a mask, you can find just as many reasons
2 minutes
where masks make no difference at all. My story is not a hypothetical possibility, it is a real life example of the ridiculousness of these rules. Will my family have been better off wearing masks around each other in quarantine or isolating the positive cases? No, it will have made no difference at all in my scenario and many others like it. Recommend for people to wear masks, allow businesses to decide if they will require masks in their stores, but do not go down the slippery slope of threatening the citizens of your county with arrest or other penalties because they decide not to wear a mask for medical personnel or any reason. Let your citizens choose for themselves because they will certainly remember your choice in the voting booth.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Amanda Tosca? Yes.
Judge, I have my proof here if you want
Go ahead.
to get all my tests is here so you can see it.
Thank you.
Hello and good morning. My name is Amadia Tosca. Somewhere in the Bible it says that the righteous or wealthy people control the poor. I stood here a couple of weeks ago and explained some of my injustices that occurred in New Jersey. Now with this COVID and this violation of our rights by forcing us to wear a mask, I've dealt with more injustice even prior to the mask when I first got to Texas in December of 2019. I was dealt with more injustice by Fort Worth. This is how the supposed righteous is dealing with all of my injustice. They are just giving me more injustices if I open my mouth and try to utilize the courts. All because I'm poor. I'm unable to get justice. Proverbs 22:1 says, "A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold." Well, I have been begging for favor for almost 7 years now, but all I'm getting is ignored and more injustices. Now this mask deal, I have to deal with more. I am a human being too, Your Honor, and prior to the New Jersey Transit PD case that caused my criminal record, I had a clean record. We have a right to choose to wear a mask or not. The end of times in the Bible says that people will not care for others. I believe that this is the biggest worldwide stunt, and it has to do with caring for others, not COVID. I plead with you, Judge Whitley, to please allow us to have a choice, just like the government from Georgia is allowing people to have a choice because it's impeding on our rights. In addition, I have a suggestion for additional revenue that can create more jobs as well. Instead of dipping into citizens' tax funds, you can create more jobs. For instance, Trinity Trails is a gorgeous tourist attraction. I think that the county should invest in handrails and concession stands for water, snacks, and souvenirs should be placed all throughout the trails.
Thank you. Judith Shelton.
I believe she already spoke. Is Sharon Perry? Okay. Ms. White?
Brenda White?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
First, I see that Mr. Glenn Whitley, who issues these orders, doesn't see fit to hear what we have to say, or where is he? Is he gone for the rest of the meeting? Is he stepped out because he doesn't want to hear from us, or what? I will say that you, Gary Fickus, are my commissioner. You are my commissioner, and there you are. And, I don't like what I'm seeing coming out of this. I mean, how magnanimous of you guys for not giving yourself a raise this time. Woo-hoo. But, meanwhile, we're all suffering through this mask order. Anybody who wants to wear a mask, God bless them. I have no problem with that. But I talk to people in stores who are workers in stores. They all tell me without a doubt that they go home with headaches. They go home and they're wiped out because they can't breathe properly. When I have to put this stupid thing on, I feel like I can't breathe properly. And, what is it going to take? Is it going to take somebody to literally fall over dead, or many people to fall over dead because they're not getting the proper oxygen through these masks? Do you guys care? Does anybody care? And what happens do we ever shut our government, or do we ever shut the people down and require masks when the flu season is going around? And that's far more deadly for children. But what we're doing to children, that's a whole nother issue. They have to socially distance. The long-term psychological effects from these kids being treated as if they are enemies of the state. And that's the way they're being treated. This is all very abnormal. It's not right. It's not freedom. I talk to people from other states, and they tell me that they can't believe how less free Texas is than other states. Get off of it. I mean, what is it going to take? Or is the next thing, well, you have to have a vaccine in order to not wear a mask? What's the next thing? I mean, this is a very slippery slope. I don't like, the CDC. A lot of this is being done for political reasons, and I personally do not appreciate it. Even little Lord Fauci, and that's what I call him, said that this will all be over in November. What else is in November? The election. Get over it. Get over it. I'm telling you, we the people are mad about this, and we're not going to take much more of this. I'm telling you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda White?
That was Brenda White.
Brenda White, okay. Did Sherrod Perry not here? Sherrod Perry? Okay, then Robert, I'm not sure, looks like Bucky Bucher. Is there a Robert out there?
You got it.
When it comes to the COVID-19, it is said to be a virus that's no different than other. It's one that spreads through many people, worse than the flu, worse than anything we've seen. Basically, it's a fear tactic. Let's cut it dry, because I'm a pretty straightforward dude. It's you know what it is. I can't say the word out of respect in another courtroom. But Y2K is going to destroy everything. 2001, anthrax is going to kill us all. West Nile virus is going to kill us all. SARS is going to kill us all. Bird flu is going to kill us all. 2006, E. coli is going to kill us all. Financial collapse is going to kill us all. Swine flu is going to kill us all. The Mayan calendar predicts the world ending. North Korea is going to cause World War III. Ebola virus is going to kill us all. ISIS is going to kill us all. Zika virus is going to kill us all. Coronavirus is going to kill us all. But here we are standing, sitting, having more recoveries, 6%, which is a low number, instead of trying to hide it behind the high numbers, which is ridiculous. And some people would call the doctor a quack, which I'm going to personally call him a quack, because I think that's exactly what he is. So what makes this pandemic different? It's a political game. Apparently it destroyed America, but particularly we're talking about Tarrant County. I mean, there's no other way, because people are suffering, and that doesn't mean nothing. That's the lowest point. We don't care. We'd rather keep the mask on. We'd rather shut down business, keep them 50%, where they're losing money daily. They're having to drive back the force, driving up the unemployment, which is true numbers. You can look that up anywhere. And it's just insane that I'm watching people that I care about, love, struggle. And y'all don't care. Y'all sit up there day in and fucking day out. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. That's my nature, and I'm trying to calm that down. But day in and day out, y'all are like, oh, who cares? As long as I get my pay, I'm good. I want to say I commend y'all for not taking that. That's a big step for the people. We can breathe a little bit on that. Every medical field has a baseline. And that's a truth. So what is our baseline? What number do we have to unattainably attain? I'm inquisitive. I want to know. I know what my son's baseline is. His O2 level gets below 85%, we got a problem. His protein levels get below 2.3%, it's a problem.
2 minutes.
It's a problem. So what's our baseline? What is it? Invisible number? We got to keep going to November the 30th. What's it going to be? January the 1st? What is it? What's our number? Does anybody know? 6% is low. That's low. Not a lot of people are believing this match. There's a lot of people are saying, man, this has got to be something different, because we've done what we've done. We've curved where y'all have asked us to. You've curved it. You've curved it. Mental illness is on the rise. Kids are killing themselves, especially in the county where I'm originally from, before I moved up here, by the droves, because they can't take this. It's too much. And it's happening here too. I mean, we've got countless pictures. Fauci, one of our commissioners, no mask on. I don't care if you're eating or not. If you're taking a picture, you're not eating, put the mask on. Either commit or don't. Commit to it or don't.
Mr. Booker, thank you very much for your comments. Katharina Ross.
Commissioners, Judge. So I can understand why your defenses are maybe up and your ears may be closed to so much of what you're hearing about mandates and masks and shutdowns. And I'm a scientist, so I guess I could talk about disagreement in the scientific community about treatments and preventative risks. But I don't think that's really relevant when it comes to whether the government ought to be micromanaging our personal behavior in the guise of nannying us to safety. And we could definitely talk about the collateral damage of these edicts. I mean, from human life to human quality of life. But even that, I think, is irrelevant. I mean, we do not ask or even allow our leaders in this country to remove the risk from our lives. We just ask for a free space around ourselves so that we can manage our own risk. And I am not an activist. I kind of hate being here and doing this. But I want to add my voice to so many people saying, we don't live in North Korea, you know? We don't have leaders that are a cadre of untouchable, unanswerable, unchecked, pot-bellied autocrats. I mean, we here, we're the descendants of a special kind of freedom warrior. You know, Americans, we threw tea in the face of a monarch, and we spilt our blood and treasure at the altar of large and small freedoms. We're proud of that. And you know, last time it was just a small consumer tax that broke that camel's back. And I would say, much like you gentlemen, the King's men often probably sneered at speeches that history views a little bit more kindly. So a mask here, capacity reductions from Austin there. I think eventually we'll see that Americans are still made of that foundational resistance to elitist dismissal of our God-given rights. At least I hope so. And I do commend you for rejecting the raise. It's a hard time. My husband, he's blessed to be well employed, but even his company's got raise freezes. They canceled bonuses and 401k matching. We're just glad he's working. But we've seen entrepreneurs like my sister just watch their blood and tears dissolve, into looming poverty, hopelessness. And that's a little scary. So I want to ask, because I really think that you're doing what you believe is noble and right. We're talking about lives here, and I totally understand that. But regardless of what might keep some small percent of people, some small percent safer for some small percent of extra time, like, how far do you really believe the spirit of the American Constitution allows these emergency orders to be stretched and, I would say, abused? You don't have to answer.
Well, and I guess what I would say is that basically at this point in time, state law has given us certain authority, as I indicated last week, and will continue. And as far as when will this end, I would say that again, I still remain in communication with members of the court, with folks from the cities, from the counties surrounding us, the medical professionals, the public health folks. We're listening and we're talking, and again, my order is specifically only with regards to the masks. And I do not want to in any way, shape, or form close businesses or put those types of requirements on. And I see the masks as working and helping toward that regard. The order can end at any given point in time. It doesn't, just because November 30th is what's written on there right now, does not mean that it goes to November the 30th or that it ceases at November the 30th. Tama Gunn.
Hello. Before I begin, can I ask you a question based on something you said earlier? Earlier you said something about not having power and authority. Are you saying that none of you have a voice when it comes to Governor Abbott? He does not allow you to speak or hear your opinions, and you have no input?
I have not been asked for input. I guess one time since we started, did he ask for my input on a particular matter? I have been able to talk with some of the staff and give them my thoughts. Whether they have conveyed them to the governor or not, I do not know. But the governor has not sought out my opinion other than that one instance. The school boards, they can seek out, but ultimately the governor makes his decision. Ultimately, the school boards make their decision Ultimately, as a court, we determine how far out the emergency declaration goes, and I decide on the orders that are issued during and under that declaration of independence or declaration of emergency.
So you can't just offer your opinion then?
Well, I have offered my opinion. I'm not usually one, just as many of y'all are. I have a tendency to want to offer my opinion, but that doesn't mean they have to listen to it.
Okay. Okay, so I'll dig in now. My minute counter's missing. Okay. God says he will send a strong delusion in order that all may be condemned who did not believe the truth. Texas State Senator Bob Hall has a great analogy. When there's a major physical disaster like Hurricane Harvey, do you exclude the first responders that are able to care for the victims and take advice from people that have no first-hand experience? I don't think so. That's exactly what's happening right now during this crisis. Not only were doctors told to stand down, they were threatened with the loss of their medical license if they didn't. The governor, the medical board, the pharmaceutical board all told doctors they could not go to the front lines, they could not use the hospitals, they could not prescribe certain medications. They were threatened with 180 days in jail and an $1,800 fine if they did anything considered a violation of these orders, right here in Texas. Dr. Robert Armstrong from Galveston had 39 nursing home patients come down with COVID, most vulnerable population. He treated them based on his own skills and knowledge that he had been taught. Not only did they all survive, they didn't go to the hospital or get put on a ventilator. When he tried to share this knowledge, he was censored and threatened to lose his license. Senator Scott Jensen from Minnesota was threatened with the loss of his medical license because he told a reporter that doctors had been told in writing to fill out death certificates as COVID deaths, even when it was an accidental death. According to Dr. Held from San Antonio, starting in June 8th, hospitals that had admitted at least 161 COVID cases qualified for $50,000 per patient, on top of the money they would get from insurance and Medicare. That's over $8 million each hospital. 42% of the current excess deaths are a direct result of medical mismanagement that has led to suicides, overdoses, heart disease, cancer, domestic abuse, and much more.
2 minutes.
Last week, you were told this was a spiritual battle, a political agenda, an attack on our constitutional freedom. You told us you could not be swayed by anything and you would only listen to your trusted advisors. You should find out where your advisors are getting their information, because they're definitely not getting it from the doctors with the boots on the ground that are facing this virus head on, because they're being censored. You have been given the opportunity to hear the truth. Now you need to break free from the delusion that has blinded you and your advisors, so all of you can see that this is a crime against humanity. Do your job. Protect the innocent. Follow the money. Prosecute those who have perpetrated this crime and destroyed our economy of this great nation. And lastly, set the people free to make their own choices. And ask yourself, legally, in a court of law, would this qualify as a medical emergency and a disaster?
Thank you, Ms. Gunn.
Thank you.
Ms. Perry, Sharon Perry.
She is left.
No, he.
Oh, I'm
He's
sorry.
not coming.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. So, 1984 is a book that was written by George Orwell that you all have probably heard of. And that book described a very dark, very dystopian future. And the author, Orwell, while he was on his deathbed, and he gave a warning to mankind. And he basically said, look, if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. And the moral of this, and that's essentially what the book was about, and the moral of this is, don't let that happen. That's why we come here. That's why we've been coming here for the past 2 months. Another book was Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And it had the same theme. It talked about it described a future of totalitarianism, and it was fascism essentially. And again, I'm going to give you a quote from Huxley, the author. The dictators will find that to hold on to their power, okay, they must get the consent of the ruled, and they will get the consent through propaganda, and basically by bypassing the rational side of man and appealing to his subconscious and his emotions, i.e. fear. So eventually making him love his slavery. So his message was, hey, you can make people walk right into slavery and walk right into oppression, and they'll actually think that it's a good thing because they've been deceived in believing that. So those books were written over 70 years ago. So we've been warned. And there's other, books and such that describe something similar. So I want to show you a picture of a protest that was in Germany, and there were many others, like in the past couple of weeks here. This is just one picture. This was in Berlin, Germany, and that's one country that's one country that would understand what tyranny looks like when you consider the Berlin Wall. It fell over only 30 years ago. So the numbers are growing. You may think that we're all just a bunch of conspiracy kooks that come in week after week, but we're basing our stance on something realistic. So first of all, the mask. Since you mentioned that is the mandate that sort of brought me here. The science on mask is very, very disputable at this point. As they've been saying, there's many, many doctors who will tell you that it's actually harmful to be wearing masks, especially when you think of all the workers who are, have to wear it for like 8 hours a day for their job. So I won't get into that though, because I'll tell you what I really believe about the mask now. I believe the masks are training. They're training us to be submissive. And again, this may seem like a conspiracy theory to you all now, but again, in a year or so, we might be proven right, and I hope I'm not proven right. But again,
3 minutes.
Okay. Again, this is all part of I'll just say it. I can't finish it, but I'll just say it. A New World Order agenda, which George Bush talked about and many others have talked about. So.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. That's all of the audience participation forms that I have today. Ms. Manius, I would suggest that at this time we proceed to closed session, recess and proceed to closed session.
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to recess at this time. And we'll now discuss the following matters.
Hang on just a second, Judge. Let me get my stuff. Okay. Members of the court, if we can go to the administrator section and go to item number 9. This is the discussion and possible action concerning activities associated with the coronavirus. So do we have Guidehouse on the line?
Yes, GK, Katie's here.
Hi, Katie. So do you want to go ahead and start your slide program?
That sounds great. Good afternoon, Judge and Commissioners. This is Katie Chesson with Guidehouse. Like every week, we're going to start our presentation with a quick project status update. I can't see the screen right now. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So as of right now, all activities are on track. Last week, we initiated office hours with the ILA municipalities and the distribution of the informational newsletters to them as well, which we're going to talk about a little bit more on an upcoming slide. We received the updated guidance from Treasury for payroll and have revised the payroll guidance for the ILA municipalities to reflect that guidance. We also received updated FEMA guidance related to eligible future expenses and have provided the county team with an overview. We have begun working with the county to transition some processes from the county to our teams to be able to provide more comprehensive support to the county. And over the next 2 weeks, we're going to be working closely with the county to take a deep dive into the county programs and the funding received to get a clear view of where we're at right now with funding spent and funding received. So we're going to mix it up a little bit today, and I'm going to start with providing you guys an overview of the support that we're providing around the ILA distribution. We've been working on the county with this over the past 2 weeks. And then after this, we'll be doing our 4 pillars update and the county spend update. Are there any questions on this slide? If not, we can move to the next slide, which is the overview of the ILA support. So as I previously noted, we initiated the ILA office hours last Wednesday. We had 59 participants from various municipalities join for an hour where Tarrant County IT team led a tutorial over the FTP site. Our team provided an overview of CRF eligibility and risk areas and the ILA process for the county, which you'll see depicted below on the right. And then we wrapped up this session with a Q&A for the county. We'll be continuing these office hours every Wednesday, and we'll be including various webinars, guidance updates, reporting assistance, and other funding options. For this week's office hours, we're tentatively going to be providing an overview on payroll and reporting requirements. If that webinar is not done this week, it'll be done next week. We're still working with the county on the guidance on that to see if we can do it this week. To supplement the office hours, we've also started a weekly newsletter that gets distributed to the municipalities. To the right, you'll see a graphic showing a glimpse into what the first newsletter looks like. This newsletter includes upcoming events, reminders, a list of resources, and a checklist to make sure that the municipalities are on track with their reporting requirements. Do any of you guys have any questions over the ILA support that we're providing?
I would like to make 2 comments. First of all, I think that for the first meeting that it was very well received. You had a lot of good comments from the municipalities, their city managers, and the people that are actually working into documenting what is necessary to report back to the auditor. Second of all, and we'll just ask staff to do this, whenever we get the weekly newsletter, let's make sure that it's sent to the Commissioner's Court also. Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no other comments or questions on this slide, we can go ahead and move over to the 4 pillars update. So similar to previous weeks, I'm just going to touch on the pillars with updates, and then the administrator's office will be providing a more detailed update on the actual programs after our presentation. So this week, the only update we have on the 4 pillars is under the local partners. We're teaming with the county to perform detailed eligibility reviews of budgets and reports provided by the municipalities. The supplemental guidance on payroll and the supplemental guidance on documentation and reporting requirements has been revised and is currently in review by the county. We're hoping to distribute that as soon as possible. Are there any questions on the 4 pillars? If not, I will pass it over to Rachel, and she will get started on the county spend update.
Thank you, Katie. So if we can move on to the county spend update grant opportunity slide. Here we have an overview of the county's grants. There have not been any new awards since last week, and in total there are about $229 million in grant funds that have already or will soon be received by the county. There have been expenditures against these grants, which are captured on the next slide. Any questions before we move on? If not, we can move to the next slide, county spend update expenditures. So here, of course, we have our overview of expenditures. The total amount of invoiced and encumbered expenditures is about $109 million, an increase of about $5 million from the previous week. This increase is primarily due to recently issued grants from the Small Business Assistance Program and the NGO Assistance Program. Any questions on this slide? If not, I'll pass it back to Katie to wrap up.
Thanks, Rachel. So as of right now, the county has an estimated total federal funding related to COVID-19 expenditures of $254 million. As I've noted in previous weeks, that does include the estimate for what FEMA PA would look like. We currently have $25 million, but that could be more or less depending on what the county's eligible FEMA expenses look like. Of that amount, the county has expended $108.9 million of COVID-related expenditures, which Rachel just summarized on the previous slide. There are 112.2 expenditures that are earmarked for the 4 pillars or for multiple grants, which have these specific purposes for the expenses that are allowed to be reimbursed against those, leaving $33.2 million remaining that's not earmarked and not expended. Of the $109 million expended, we've identified $19.7 million of eligible FEMA PA expenses, 5.8 of eligible CRF expenses not eligible for FEMA or multiple grants, $79.9 million of expenditures related to the county programs like ILA distribution, small business, NGO, and rental that are under CRF as well. And then the auditor's office has identified $3.7 million of expenses related to the multiple grants discussed on the previous slide. Do you guys have any questions on the current status of the expenditures and funding sources?
I guess the question that I have about, I want you to talk to us a little bit about the FEMA numbers and what FEMA is saying is with regards to their future reimbursements.
Yeah, so as of right now, just to provide a little update on the FEMA PW, so the county is working on getting the first PW out the door. So we are working in collaboration with them, and then that process is going to be transitioning over to our team to work to take the lead on and collaborate with the county to make sure we get all of the PWs out as soon as possible. And then to provide an update for the FEMA PA eligible expense update, basically what came out last week is that FEMA released a policy that said for expenses incurred after 9/15, they're going to have a lot more narrow of a scope for what's going to be eligible for that. So they've now outlined very specific emergency work facilities, and your FEMA expenditures like PPE or your like work payroll for that kind of stuff for FEMA. Sorry, I'm blanking, but so any of your FEMA related expenditures would have to be related to this emergency work facility for it to be eligible. So basically before they had just like your standard PPE, and any facility could have taken the PPE as long as it was related to COVID. And now they're saying, okay, well, it has to be PPE purchased by, we'll say, public health for a specific purpose to be eligible. So basically they've just come in and said for expenses incurred after, it has to be a very specific purpose, that they've outlined everything. And they also said that contact tracing is 100% not going to be eligible under FEMA PA because they've determined that there are other sources, which we knew from earlier guidance, but they have come out and officially said this in their policy. There are better sources to get funding for contact tracing. But that was kind of the gist of it. It's not going to impact anything or any expenses that we've incurred to date. It'll just go into effect for expenses incurred after 9/15.
What about test sites and things like that? Weren't those also being covered by FEMA?
Yes, and Rachel, jump in if you remember, but there was no change to the testing expenditures as long as they were within the scope of that emergency work facility that they've outlined, which I think most of yours are, at least from what we've discussed so far, so it shouldn't be too big of an impact. It'll be more of an impact on like the disinfecting of like your county administrator's building now is technically not a emergency work site from what they've determined, whereas before we were able to take the disinfecting expenditures against FEMA PA, if that makes sense.
Okay, so what is that? So then it has to be paid for out of the CARES Act money?
Yes. So if for anything that wouldn't be eligible under FEMA PA would have to go against CARES in the future. And we have already talked to the county administrator's office about this, and we are going to be doing some planning work in the next couple weeks. That's why we're kind of doing our deep dive analysis on where we're at. And then we're going to do some planning work over the next couple weeks to kind of make sure that we're really incorporating everything and making sure we're thinking through the changes that are coming.
Commissioner Pickens, did you?
Yeah, my question's really probably more to GK, but it concerns contact tracing. 6-7 weeks ago, we approved the hiring of, I want to say, 180 people for contact tracing.
That's correct.
That you were going to house at the Mercantile facility, I believe.
Yes.
That originally started off as 270 people. And I don't think at the time, well, where are we at on that?
So we have been working with two areas. First of all, we've been working, Public Health has been working with a temp agency, basically, a professional service agency, and we continue to increase the number of people that we are hiring. I don't know exactly how many we have hired so far from that particular resource, but probably close to 100 people so far. Also, you might remember that we entered into an agreement with UNT Health Science Center for 45 FTEs.
Right.
And we now have those. They're going through training or have gone through training. The good thing about the Health Science Center is that they're not going to be located here in any of our facilities. They're going to have their own facilities. They're going to have their own computer equipment. They're going to have their own cell phones, things such as that. So we're ramping up on that. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about those that you're hiring.
Yes. So the last I checked, it was about a couple weeks ago, we had a little consolidation of all where the numbers are. We were about halfway through with the hiring process. So again, it takes a while because we're trying to hire locally as much as we can, but people are applying from all over. So I think we have another 100 or so vacancies to fill at this point, but we're getting there. And we're utilizing both our buildings, the Mercantile building that was leased, and then there's the Quorum building that was already a space that the county had. We have a team that has already moved in there because that team deals with facility outbreaks. So they're now gearing up to have this school team built out and all those type of things. So we're utilizing all the spaces that we have.
So you might talk a little bit also about the fact that these new hires, they may not always be in one of our offices. They may be working from home.
That is correct. So the goal is to have them come into the office, learn as much as they can, and if we start to get really packed in there, we'd like to have them kind of work from home and flex out as much as we can. Again, we don't want too many people packed into one building and then have an outbreak of our own.
So how about the Mercantile building? Approximately how much space did we lease there?
Square footage, I think 16.
For how many people?
Oh,
I mean,
I think it can accommodate
170 people there? Or?
Yes, sir. It can accommodate, I'm trying to think, about 132 people can be put into the building if it's completely full. Yes, sir.
And if I walked in there today, how many would I see?
About 70 or so.
How many?
About 70.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, and the number fluctuates. Like some days, we have 65, some days we have 75, but average is about 70. Yes, sir.
Okay.
How about, while you're here, just talk to us a little bit about your contacting tracing, contact tracing.
So we've launched a couple of tools. I think we mentioned that earlier. So on the front end, we use a notification system called Everbridge. A lot of emergency management departments and the likes across the county and several other places use them. City of Fort Worth has that tool through their emergency management. We got the same one. And as we get case notifications from different labs and other sources, we put them through this automated system to give them a automated notification. It does a phone call, text message, variety of other options. And they have the ability to either call us on our hotline to speak to a contact tracer, or they can fill out an online survey. And they can also indicate if they would like for us to call them back. So that takes care of the front end. And then in the middle, of course, we still have people completing the case interviews and all that follow-up that's needed. And in the end, now we have a new tool called Sarah Alert. And what that does is once I've identified who are the cases and who are the contacts, we can enroll them in an automated monitoring system that texts them on a daily basis if they have any change in their symptoms, or if they were contacts that were being monitored and now are symptomatic. They can indicate that on that text message through that tool, and then we get an alert, the point being Sarah Alert. And then we take further action on those situations. So it has changed the way we do it. I mean, we brought in a lot of technology and became more efficient.
What percentage of the people would you say are going through this process completely?
I mean, we put all of them through it. Yes, sir. So 100% of the new cases coming in.
Well, but 100% aren't responding to the first initial deal.
I'd have to go look on the percentage breakdown, but I mean, it's a significant number that are responding back through those methods.
I would like for you to look at giving us an update. I constantly hear that, well, the contact tracing is just not feasible now with all the numbers we've got, and I really can't tell them where we are. I mean, I think, I do say that I think we're a lot more successful now that we're using the text,
yes, sir,
as well as other forms of social media to try to reach out. But I don't know how successful we're being along the path in each one of I see the initial, okay, who have you been around, and are we actually following up with them? And, give me I'd like a report that says, okay, we contact these individuals who we know are positive. They give us, and as a result of that, we've reached out and identified and told people to quarantine or whatever. And then on the ones that were positive, we now move them over to Sarah, or the monitoring situation.
Yes.
And how many of those are we working through? And how many people are we assuming have recovered purely based upon the length of time they had it, and not, well, I've gone back to work and there's a positive confirmation from the individual that they are now back to work, and that's what's caused us to call them recovered.
Yes, sir. I will have that report for you hopefully next week.
Good.
Any other questions?
So I'm going to go back on my FEMA question, I guess, one more time to say, so there are changes in what FEMA is now saying they're going to pay, and are we doing everything we can to make sure we get filed as quickly as possible all the expenses prior to September the 15th or the 16th, because I just have it in my own mind that people may all of a sudden change their mind and say, King's X, we're no longer going to reimburse you.
So, Katie, first of all, the first question, did they not relax that September 17th date?
I believe it was the September 15th. I have not seen anything on relaxing that, but I can check with Sean and see if he's heard anything on that.
There's a lot of nose shaking going on behind you.
Nose?
No, they haven't.
Well, I just asked a question.
I know, and I'm just saying a lot of the folks behind you are shaking their heads saying no.
Very good. Got to get some rear view mirrors.
Well, I understand that concept. That's kind of why we got our backs to the wall.
The blood's dripping down your back of your suit there, so.
Okay. Yes, and one of the things that we have done, and I don't know exactly where we are on this, but we have allowed Guidehouse to access SAP, because one of the things, the new contract with Guidehouse, we're asking them to do more and more complex tasks for us now, and so they're helping us work the FEMA requests up as quickly as possible. Let us get you a better report next week on that, Judge. So what I wanted to do right now is just very quickly go through the 4 pillars and give you an update. First of all, the small business assistance. As of today, whenever you approve the claims register that you're approving an additional 276 grants for $2.24 million. When you do that, plus the auditor's office has been working the franchise applications that we had received that we initially thought would be ineligible because they didn't qualify. But since we're opening this thing up, so as of today, we have handled 1,756 distributions for the small business assistance, which equates to $14.3 million. And you'll find in your red folder a report that we put together on a weekly basis that has those particular numbers. When it comes to rental assistance, we're beginning to see, we received a large number of rental assistance requests last week. We're working through these. We now received about 718 of those, and we've approved 402. We continue to work with the auditor's office to make sure that our initial review, we can capture more data for the auditor's office for them to feel comfortable in making those payments. I know that we're going to be talking with the court probably next week about paying late fees, and we want to get some action on that.
That's what I was going to ask about. We need to be able to make the landlord whole and keep the tenant housed, and rent is just a part of that. Late fees are a part of that. Sometimes utility costs that are metered through the landlord and charged to the tenant are a part of that. If we're not able to pay all of the expenses that the tenant owes to the landlord, then we are not doing an effective job.
So what we're doing, I know that Patricia's been working with Chris to get the proper language. We want to get a meeting with audit and DA and our staff so that we can finalize that, and we'll bring that to court. Do you think we might be able to do that by next week? Okay. And we'll work with the auditor's office on that. So I'm not going to go into the NGOs. Kristen is going to talk to you about that. Of course, you heard about the local partnership initiative, and we still only have 10 chambers that have requested payment. So with that ends my report on this particular agenda item. I'd be more than happy to try to answer any questions you might have. Oh, I did want to bring up one other thing, talking about testing. We continue to test after a full week, which ended Saturday. In the Arlington location of this past week, we tested 458. North Richland Hills, the H2O program up there, we tested 678. That was with 5 days worth of testing. One of the days, last Wednesday, because it was raining, that site was closed. And the one at Tarrant County College, which is only a 3-day testing site, we tested 467. So we're looking at close to 1,600 people we tested last week. Now that does not include the numbers that we're seeing with our partnership with the City of Fort Worth. So we continue to test. And with that, once again, I'll ask if there's any questions that the court may have on that particular item. If not, then we're going to go ahead and ask that we move to items number 10 and 11. These are the NGO programs, and I'll ask Ms. Camareno to come and address the court at this time.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Kristen.
I'll give you an update on the program before I move into items 10 and 11. So in the back of your Care for Tarrant programs update, you have the funding chart, which you're probably used to seeing now. I do have a larger copy on paper if any of you would like to have that. It did print a little bit small this time.
I'll have it.
Thank you. Okay. So this week I'll be bringing 7 new recommendations as well as 10 funding agreements. That will bring us to a total of 66 organizations who have either brought for recommendation, a funding agreement, or are one of the 5 still under review. By next week, I anticipate that all of the eligible NGOs will have been brought to you with a recommended funding amount, and by the 29th, we should have all of the agreements through court for your approval. The total amount under consideration or previously awarded at this point is $7.296 million. So of the $20 million allocated to this program, that is the max expenditure at this point. Do you have any questions about that chart?
Have you considered reopening the application period? I have been contacted by 3 or 4 organizations who claim they did not know about the original application period. And these are long-standing NGOs in our community that one would think would have known.
Sure.
But you got to take them at their word that they did not know. And since we've got money left, maybe we ought to give them a second bite at the apple.
Will you please forward those, or I'll work with your staff to get those. And we've talked a little bit internally about how
the names of several.
Yes, sir. I have the ones you've sent already.
We have worked with a couple of NGOs that did not go through our regular application program. And if you'll give us those names, those organizations, let us take a look at them.
Okay, I will.
And rather than going through the entire process again, we might just consider them one at a time. So we'll
fine with me.
We'll discuss that.
Well, in most of our programs, we're seeing that we have money left over, like our small business grants. So I think what we need to be doing is genuinely looking for where we can spend that money. I don't want to send it back to DC.
Understood.
Definitely not.
Any other questions about the NGO update? Okay, I'll move into item 10 then. That is a request for approval of the recommended funding amounts for NGOs as part of the NGO assistance program. There are 7 this week, and the total is $197,018.71. You have a chart there of those agencies attached to item 10.
Call your contact and see where it stands. I see.
So what you're asking for is court approval for the recommended funding amounts for those 7 non-governmental organizations.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I always get confused between those organizations in 10 and those in 11.
Yes, sir.
But they're at different stages in
Yes,
the
sir.
process.
Yes, sir, they are. So it's part of the process we set up at the beginning of the program. So you approve a recommended funding amount not to exceed. We go back and refine the agreement, work with the auditor's office to make sure everything's eligible, and then we bring back the final agreement to you for approval.
So these in 11 are final agreements?
Yes, sir. So I'll move on to item 11, and that is a request for approval of the agreements with Special Olympics Texas, Grand Prairie United Charities, Mansfield Mission Center, Family Pathfinders of Tarrant County, Central Arts of Bedford, Six Stones, Arlington Urban Ministries, YMCA of Fort Worth, Metroport Meals on Wheels, Children First, Inc., and Your Harvest House for the distribution of CRF as part of the NGO program.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
We have 2 additional items that are not COVID related. Item number 12, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court repeal the ban or the prohibition of outside burning in the unincorporated areas of Tarrant County.
Move approval.
Figure it out.
Go to JD.
We've got a motion and a
Second. And he can motion.
Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We should have done this one back earlier on so that they could have seen that we actually sometimes cancel things before they're due to be canceled.
Yes, sir. So item number 13, this is something we've talked about this morning. It deals with aerial spraying in the northeast quadrant of the northeast quadrant of Tarrant County. What we're requesting is that the Commissioners Court approve aerial spraying in Tarrant County to control the spread of West Nile virus. Let me just make one or two comments on that. Our initial focus is going to be in the northeast quadrant, and we'll be bringing all of this information back to you as we begin to move forward with the aerial spraying and things of that sort. This is a more general type request for countywide, and that way we don't need to be coming back to the court periodically for this. We have been working with the city managers and the cities up there, and very happy to report that a vast majority of them are very supportive of us doing that. And we talked about cost sharing, and the cities didn't flinch on that either. We asked them to get back with us by tomorrow noon to see if they're in or not, and we'll have that information. Because it's supposed to rain tonight, and we're supposed to have some rain the rest of this week, we need to make sure that we time the spraying, because we don't want to spray right when it starts to rain, so we need to get a little bit farther down the road. And so we're asking you all to give us the authorization so when we determine that it's time to spray, along with our municipal partners, that we can go ahead and launch this spray.
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Tidwell?
We have one item that we're asking the court to consider today, and that is to make a determination on whether Tarrant County will utilize the payroll tax deferral relief under Notice 2020-65. There's been even some additional information since this court communication was put together last week, and based on the court's sentiment that was shared last week, the additional information available, it is the auditor's recommendation to agree with the court and suggest that the court approve that we not enter into the deferral.
Move approval.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
I move to receive and file the personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Good afternoon. We have one more item for your consideration, which is the approval of a retiree group medical plan, senior supplement without drug plan, and their rates. You might remember on August the 18th, the court did approve the various health plans for both employees and retirees, which included a replacement plan for the senior supplement plan. On August the 19th, at the PBC Board of Governance meeting, it was communicated to us that there is a small group of 5 individuals that do not qualify for either of the approved 2021 retiree plans due to pharmacy. These 5 employees have the senior supplement plan with a separate Part D prescription plan. Well, under the IRS, you can't have a crossover plan, so you can't have 2 prescription plans, and our current offerings have prescriptions. So the PBC board did approve a continuation of the fully insured senior supplement plan without Group D prescription coverage for 2021 for these individuals. Exhibit A reflects the 2021 contribution rates, and it includes a census as of 7/1/20. This group is the group that is subject to the 3% soft cap, and that has been applied, and those rates are included on your Exhibit A. If I can turn to it. And those increases are reflected. So just for example, for a retiree with Medicare, that rate is going to increase by $35.66. And that is, you can see the cost share also on the far right, and the total rate on the next to the column to the far right. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions for you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Batesman? You got a few items. Did you give up on the consent agenda?
Not yet. We have 8 items for your consideration this afternoon. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2021-45, signing a contract for janitorial services. Our recommendation be to award a per enterprise basis, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors for group 1, 2, 3 buildings as shown in your court communique.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is also a bid award recommendation for bid 2021-75. This signing of contract for a temporary general labor for facilities management. Our recommendation be toward a per hourly rate, awarding to the primary and secondary vendors as shown in the court communique.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 3 is also a bid award recognition for bid 2021-83. This is our annual contract for graphic and photographic supplies. Our recommendation would be toward a per enterprise basis, discount from this price, awarding to the primary, secondary vendors as shown in the court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 4 is another bid award recommendation for bid 2021-85. This is our annual contract for medical examiner supplies. Our recommendation would be toward the primary and secondary vendors, meeting all specifications, is shown in your court communique.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 5, again, is a bid award recommendation for bid 2022-08. This is a bid for the sale of Sig Sauer rifles. The Sheriff's Office recommended that we award to the highest price per lot. We grouped them together in lots rather than per unit price, and that award would bring revenue to the county. Nardis Gun Club, lots 1 through 3 and 15, $12,875. Lots 4 and 10 for Defiant Arms, $26,820. And lots 11 through 14 for Phoenix Distributors for a total of $10,000. These are all federal licensed gun dealers.
How many rifles were there?
Oh, mostly 100 and...
How many?
Seems like 5 per lot.
Oh.
5 per lot, right.
Okay.
Are these rifles that were used by our deputies or that were confiscated in the field?
These were rifles that were used by our deputies, and if you remember, some time back we had problems with them. They were reconditioned by Sig Sauer, and we used them for a while, purchased new ones at an excellent rate, and we're able to sell these to recoup. This is a good deal. These are good prices on these things.
All right.
So there was a problem with them?
At one time there was.
These were all AR-15s, and I think they had a jamming issue that they were dealing with, and we brought this to court during this.
I remember that.
Did the budget on 20, and you all authorized us to buy some new rifles.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 6 is an item in regards to RFQ 2021-69. This annual contract for construction materials testing and geotechnical engineering services for facilities management. We are recommending, or seeking approval rather, from the court to conduct negotiations when necessary with the 3 vendors as shown in your court communique.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 7, we are seeking an exemption from the competitive bidding requirements for the purchase of drug standards and controls, instrument parts, non-routine laboratory testing, and consumables for the ME's office. This is allowable under the state bidding statute, local government code section 26202A2.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Last item in regards to RFO 2021-86, request for offer for purchase of Cisco Tetration Platform renewal for information technology. Recommendation would be toward the NetSync Network Solutions, amount of $102,360. If the court approves this, we're also seeking contract approval.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Mr. Skinner?
Good afternoon. Members of the court, we are requesting your approval of a contract with Freeze and Nichols. This is to provide professional services to assist with the update to our subdivision and land use regulations.
I move for approval.
I'll
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments? You have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
A motion is second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Is that it?
Your Honor, I'd just like to make sure that the court remembers that next Monday, that beginning at 9 o'clock, we're going to be hearing from the 4 finalists on the design for the program management firm for the JPS bond package. We'll start at 9 o'clock, and it'll be here in the Commissioner's courtroom.
Okay. There being no further business at this time, we stand adjourned.
And if